and then I hit him again, and I accidentally hit him in the face. I didn't even mean to, jab him in the face. I just mean to like push him off, and I so happened to hit him in the face. And at that point, I was like, damn, like I shouldn't have done that. Like probably flag, whatever. Ref was standing right there. He didn't throw the flag, so that's that. After I do that though, he grabs my face mask, and there's like a scuffle for like 5 seconds. It's not on the, they don't see it, but right after that, he grabs me. There's like a scuffle. He's got my face mask. What the fuck, talking shit.
That was Amon-Ra St. Brown on his podcast, right? I think admitting that he punched Daron Payne. I can't believe how many of you watched the same video I did and reached out to me to say, he didn't hit him. He didn't hit him. What are you talking about? Daron started it. And stop making excuses. We become the excuse makers for this football team. Let me be very clear, as I was yesterday in talking about this. It didn't impact the game one way or the other. This isn't sour grapes like it would have, Washington would have won if they had flagged Amon-Ra, thrown him out, and Daron wouldn't have responded. I think that's the way it would have gone had the referee standing right next to him flagged him. Amon-Ra thinks he should have been flagged. All right, Amon-Ra St. Brown thinks he should have been flagged. The score, instead of 44-22, might have been 41-22. They had no shot in that game. And losing Daron Payne, honestly, with the way he's played this year, very up and down, wasn't necessarily a big loss anyway. Not like some of their other losses, where we can make lots of excuses. Good morning. Busy guest day on the show. Denton coming up later on this hour to talk some college football. Jeff Ehrman from Inside Maryland Sports will join me at 11. Jeff covers Maryland sports better than anybody does, and we'll have a conversation about whether or not moving on from Mike Locksley is a real thing or just a fan thing. Paul Charchian at 11:25, and then you'll hear Steve Suter's interesting observation and dialogue about Washington's defense Sunday against the Lions in his film breakdown for me yesterday. He had some interesting comparisons to comparing Washington's defense to various things based on what he called basically an abnormal game, which is what I thought. Seattle was one thing. Detroit was actually unusual because nobody was near anybody all day long. This from Jen, keeping with the excuse motif here. This from Jen. Jen writes, Kevin, I help my husband coach my son's flag football team. We teach them no excuses. I know you coach basketball. I would hope that's the lesson you try to live and teach too. So no excuses for our football team anymore. Please, no more. That's a good one. Like, I get it, Jen. I'm not coaching here from 10-1. I'm not playing the game. Of course, as a coach or a player, it's no excuses. It's next man up. You don't allow that. Of course, I totally agree with you. But that's not what we're doing here. Dale writes, too much talk about injuries. It's not like they have preseason players playing preseason games. Other teams have injuries too. This team just isn't good. Admit it. Yeah, of course they're not good. They're 3-7. Duh. Not hard to admit that, Dale. But like the first part of your tweet to me, they actually have played at times this year, and certainly in recent weeks, with non-starter, non-participant preseason or participant preseason players. And the problem, as you pointed out so eloquently, is they're not playing preseason games. They're actually playing regular season games against teams who are playing their expected regular season players. Many more of them than Washington is. The reaction to the reality of their season from some of you is hysterical to me. I get it. I'm not in my own life. I don't make excuses. I try not to. Certainly have tried to teach that to my boys. I've coached many, many years basketball. Certainly don't, allow players to just make excuses, but that's not what we do here. We're evaluating, we're opining on this team. That's what we do here for 3 hours. That's what you guys do. And the reality of their season is, yes, they need to say next man up and flex as they're saying it, but we're not coaching and playing. We're watching, and we've got opinions. So I went and did some math on this, all right, on what they've actually lost this year. So going into Sunday's game in Madrid against Miami, Washington's injury losses, there used to be a site that used to track what they call NFL lost man games. That's the number of games lost to injury. That data is really not available as much anymore. So you almost have to go do it yourself. And that's what I spent about 45 minutes yesterday doing before my podcast. So I'm going to do it here with you guys. So this is, back of the envelope, because I'm sure I'm missing a few, but I tried to get most of what they've had during the course of the year. All right. I counted 22 players for a total of 82 games heading into Sunday. But I think the more important point, because that's a lot of players and a lot of games lost, okay? I don't know where that ranks, on, the most injured teams of all time. I bet you it's not there, but it's not really the point here, because it's not the number of players in games lost. It's that the players injured have been, on both sides of the ball, their most important players. By my count, 14 players who were in the lineup as either starters or basically, close to the starting rotation, in the mix, in the, first three at a position, on opening day, okay, against the Giants, have either missed time or are out for the year. 14 of their key week one and expected contributors are either out for the year or have missed significant time. By the way, I did not count Sam Cosmi in that group. Cosmi missed the first 6 games of the year, recovering from the torn ACL in the playoff game against Detroit. So, Dale, players that have been forced into action include many players who were not expected to play. Yes, practice squad players, deep depth chart players, and players who weren't even in the organization, like Treylon Burks, who's hurt after his best game, Robbie Chosen, Chris Moore, Darnell Savage, guys like Sheldon Day and Jalen Holmes and Tay Martin and Antonio Hamilton. Antonio Hamilton, by the way, played a lot last week. Number 34, if you didn't know who he is. I'm sure you guys are doing what I'm doing every Sunday, which is I'm not familiar with that jersey number. And you got to go look it up. If you're at the game, maybe you got a program. Do they still sell programs? I think they do. Yankoff, Dieter, Vickers. I mean, you just keep going through the list of players that have had to play. And by the way, that doesn't count players who have played but not played healthy. Bates has not been a healthy player. Debo's not been necessarily a healthy player for all of the games. So, yeah, lots of players that weren't on rosters or were on practice squad or deep down the depth chart have played and played a bunch. And the problem with that is the games aren't preseason games. They count. They haven't had their guys. For some of you, it's like you're missing it. It apparently doesn't matter. Some of you believe that they should be what you expected them to be this year or what they were last year without their guys, without their players, their best players on the field more times than not. It just doesn't work that way in the NFL. 9 times out of 10, it does not work that way in the NFL. Occasionally, you'll get a team that, like the 49ers this year so far, didn't happen to them last year, 6-11. With all the injuries. This year, they're 6-4. We'll see where it ends up with all the injuries. They've gotten healthier on offense as the season's gone along, but they lost 2 critical defensive players in Bosa and Warner for the season. So we'll see where the season ends up for them. I mean, they are now 6-4 and are a very short Max favorite at Arizona after Arizona got walloped by Seattle. That line is the stinker line of the NFL weekend. No smell test picks, speaking of that, for tonight's action. Jets Patriots tonight. The Patriots are 13.5-point favorites. They actually opened at 10.5. No, I'm not taking that dog tonight. I'm not going against the Pats tonight. No chance. And there's a couple of college games tonight as well, but nothing on those either. Yeah. So, I was reading Barry Zverluga this morning and his column. And he wrote something, he asked the question of Quinn yesterday about the foundation. Is this more foundation or is it execution? Was the way he wrote it. And it basically, he came to the conclusion that who knows, really. The coach said it's execution. But for Barry wrote, is this season a blip or is this season, true? Like this is who they really are, or is it just, a blip? I think it's just a blip. That's what I think. I think this is without question a season in which hopefully they don't have more like this in terms of injuries. But I'm looking for the way Barry put it. He said, this is the way he put it. My fault. Was last year a fluke or is this year a blip? Was last year just totally flukish, 12-5, 2 playoff wins, or is this year just the aberration, the blip, because of the injuries and the schedule and whatever else you want to say? That's a good question. I would say it's a good question for the group because I think there will be answers on both sides. For me, this year is a blip. Last year was not a fluke. Last year was, a season of good fortune, but it wasn't fluke. Like fluke means it's going to happen one time. A blip means it's only going to happen, one time. This is not going to be the norm. I think this year's a blip, and I think you chalk it up to number one. Sorry, but I'm making the excuses for them. I'm giving you the reasons. They're not excuses for why they are 3-7. They've just been an absolute decapitated football team. They just have not had good enough players on the field in most of their games, their best players. Sure, their depth was questionable. Sure, their frontline starters were questionable. But there's no way that you can convince me if they had a normal injury season, normal run-of-the-mill injuries, and have, and had their best players, the majority of them, in the lineup every single game healthy, that they would be a 3-7 football team. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. Do I think that they would be an NFC championship contender? No, not after watching this defense. That was the big mystery coming into the season. The defense needed to be improved for them to have a season that, at least contended with the one they had last year. And I think even if they were healthy on defense, it wasn't going to be a good enough defense for them to be a legitimate threat to go deep into the postseason. So 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Was last year a fluke or is this year just a blip? Take your calls next. Denton after that. What do you got when we come back as well? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Are the Eagles in turmoil right now with A.J. Brown continually going public with his frustration? I mean, they're a 7-2 football team. They went on the road. They won 10-7. A video surfaced of him doing, I guess, a Twitch video saying that things are a total S show. He said, I'm not apologizing for what I'm saying. I'm not just solely about my situation. I want to win too. I think if we're really focused on winning and doing our job, we can't just keep slapping a Band-Aid over the defense doing their job and getting us out of trouble. At what point are we going to pick up our slack as an offense? That's what I'm getting at. It's not about, I don't care about winning. All I care about is stats. No, it's been week after week. Sometimes we're not doing our job on offense. You can't keep slapping a Band-Aid over that and expect to win late in the year and think you're going to go to that at the end of the year. It's not going to effing happen. Yeah, he said everything is an S show for him. Family's good, but everything here is an S show in Philadelphia. Man, I just think the Eagles are fine. I think they're fine. This is one of those things where, you know, with any other team, a non-championship kind of team, you start to wonder, is a star player going public consistently with his frustration over not getting targeted enough, not getting enough footballs thrown his way? Isn't that going to be destructive to the team chemistry, to the team locker room, etc.? Man, I don't really feel like that at all with Philadelphia. I think when he needs to be summoned, he rises to the occasion. See the Minnesota game a few weeks ago. Somebody pointed out on Twitter, and I didn't go back and read through it, but that basically the number of targets this season in 2025 are actually on pace for more than he got last year. Now, he missed some games last year, but it's not far off the pace he was targeted at a year ago. Now, a year ago, to be fair to him, the Eagles were a run-first team. They were having a season running the football that was nearly record-breaking with Saquon Barkley. They weren't really being stopped offensively all that much. They were cooking with their run game last year. And, you know, much of what they ended up doing scoring-wise started to come, you know, even later in the season. You know, it was November where they really started to get on a roll. You know, they averaged, I think, 31 points a game in the month of November last year. And then in the month of December, even with a game at the very end of the season that meant nothing to them, they averaged, you know, well over 30 a game. And then in the playoffs, you know, obviously with the 55 they hung on us, their average was well over 30 points a game as well. I think they're just a team that can do what they want and really what's required in the moment. But they are a different team this year. And I also think the landscape in the NFC is a bit different than it was last year. You know, Washington being one of the scariest, you know, opponents for them, you know, heading into the postseason last year. I know Detroit was the 1 seed. So Detroit was, you know, but Detroit was crumbling at the end defensively because of the injuries. Yeah, injuries again. The Vikings were a bit overhyped, you know, because of their defense, which actually started to tail off at the end of the year as well. This year, I don't know, man. Seattle and the Rams, the landscape is different. But, man, A.J. Brown just doesn't stop. It's constant with him. Want to mention real quickly that Window Nation is offering their end-of-year sale. They are offering 50% off all window styles and a chance for you to finance the purchase with no interest charged for 5 years. 0% interest until the year 2030. Window Nation's windows are as insulated as you can get. If you've got older windows, you're going to pay more for your heating bills because they're not insulated. They're not tight enough. They're letting the cool air in. You don't want that. New windows, if you've got older windows, make your home look better too. Window Nation's product is great. Their customer service, outstanding. They have over 45,000 five-star reviews. They have an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau. And they were voted #1 window installation company by Forbes recently in the entire United States. You may get and find a better offer, but I doubt it right now. 50% off all window styles. You're paying half price on the windows. And if you finance the purchase, yeah, you'll have some monthly payments, but without interest for 5 years. If you've been thinking about new windows, now's the time to do it before the real cold air arrives. They can get in and out of your house in a day installing your windows. Call them at 866-90-NATION or head to windownation.com. Mention my name, and the estimate will be free. It'll be convenient for you, and it will include no obligation. They'll leave you with the quote, and they'll wait for you to call them back. All right, I did put up a poll using the Barry's Verluga column question today. Was last year for our team a fluke, or is this year just a blip? If you want to vote in that poll, you can just follow me on Twitter or just go to my Twitter account at Kevin Sheehan DC and vote. Phone lines are open, 301-230-0980. Was last year a fluke or a blip? Look, to me, a fluke means like one time. It was an accident. It was a total stroke of luck. It's not going to happen again. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. I think a lot of things broke their way. And when you have a great season, even with a really good football team, things typically go your way, starting with health. You know, they were healthy last year. Number two, the schedule broke well for them. It wasn't even the teams they were playing. It was when they were playing those teams and the quarterbacks they faced. Now, they did face the best defense in recent modern history, the Eagles, 3 times from November on, twice in the final month of the season. And they performed very well against the Eagles offensively against that great defense. Their offense probably outperformed anybody else in terms of Philadelphia's playoff run. But it was their defense, of course, that was the problem. I don't see it as a one-off. I don't see it as an aberration. I don't see it as an accident. I don't think last year was a fluke. I think it was one of those good fortune seasons, but good fortune can happen. Health, schedule breaks right. They took advantage of the good fortune, but most teams would not have been able to take advantage of that good fortune the way they did because they were unbelievable on offense and they had elite level quarterback play. This year to me is a blip. As I've already outlined, my back of the envelope math says that this injury situation is 22 players long, 82 man games lost, with 14 players who were basically starters or part of the starting rotation on opening day have either missed time or are out for the year. And I didn't even include Sam Cosmi. That's forced them to go to guys that weren't anywhere near this roster when the season began. Treylon Burks, Robbie Chosen, Chris Moore, Darnell Savage, playing guys like Antonio Hamilton, you know, and playing guys out of position. You know, the last couple of weeks, because of their defensive end problems, lining Deron Payne and Javon Kinlaw, you know, up at defensive end. How's that worked out for them? Not very good. So that, to me, is a blip. Having this kind of season, Keim and I were talking about it the other day off air. He had just gotten to Madrid. We were talking about something else. We started to talk about this. He said, never in all of my years, going back to, the late 90s, he's been covering the team, have I ever seen a team banged up and injured like this one. And what Quinn said last week about the 3, you know, getting super hard hit at the same, you know, at one position, and it happened to be 2 positions, defensive end and wide receiver, is really hard to deal with because you've then got to go to players that haven't been with you. And we've seen that this year. So I think it's a blip. I think that, first of all, I think there's a chance they could play better football between now and the end of the year. On offense, anyway. I don't think they have much of a chance defensively. I really don't think they have much of a chance defensively. You know, after losing Amos last week, I mean, I don't even know who's going to play corner this week. Sandra still will be out there, right? Jonathan Jones will be out there. Who else? Anthony Hamilton. Is that his name? Antonio Hamilton, number 34, I believe he was. I had to look it up last week. Who did they add this week? Who's going to play this week, corner? I don't even know. I guess Noah Igbenogany will play a little bit this week. All right. Fluke last year or blip this year? 301-230-0980. By the way, Max, what do you say?
It's a great question. I'm not really sure. I kind of haven't. With Jaden and all that, like you can see the highest of highs, and now we're gone to the lowest of lows. I kind of want to say somewhere in the middle, but I feel like that's a cop out. I'm gonna call this year a blip because there's no way a team can be as injured as this one is 2 years in a row or multiple years, like through a long-term stretch. So I'm gonna call this year a blip. I'm gonna maintain the side of optimism that they can get things back on track, whether it's later this year or next year, we'll find out. But I'm going to call this one a blip. That's where I'm at right now.
You know, I just want to mention this before, it got bad pretty quickly this year.
Yeah, it was
but it
in a
really
hurry.
got bad the last month. They were one late fourth quarter fumble away from being 4-2. I just want to mention that. I look, even if they were 4-2, they'd be 4-6 right now. They weren't going to win any of those games that followed with the players they were putting out there, the Cowboys, Chiefs, Seahawks, or Lions. But they were a late in the rain botched handoff away from 4-2. I know, Giants, Raiders, and Bears.
The Bears were one Hail Mary away from being 5-2 last year.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's amazing the way that Hail Mary changed their season and the botched fumble changed this season for Washington. But, the Chargers are a good football team. They were banged up on their offensive line, no doubt about it, when Washington faced them. And the Bears are now tied for first in their division. Okay. Blip. Fluke last year or blip this year? 301-230-0980. Let's start with our guy, Anthony. Anthony, go ahead.
So, Kevin, in my opinion, two things can be true. This year, it was a blip because of the injuries. But last year was definitely a fluke when you go by past history. I'm sitting here looking at Pro Football Reference right now. From 2012 through last year, do you realize our best record was 9-7 in 2015?
Yeah.
You go from 4-13 to 12-5. That's not very likely. So in reverse order, 4-13, 8-1.
It was a
7-10,
completely different
7-9.
team, though, than the 4-13 team.
Oh yeah, it was a different.
It wasn't the
team,
same team. It's not like they brought back the same team and they went 4-13 to 12-5. New coaching staff, obviously new quarterback, as you know.
If somebody had gave you 3-1 odds that Washington was going to win 12 games last year, you would have took it with the knowledge of knowing that I have no way of winning that bet.
Well, yeah, I mean, I
Right
did predict that they would win double-digit games last year, but that was tongue-in-cheek, admittedly, for the most part. I thought they had a chance to be much better last year. But we see big turnarounds in the NFL all the time. We're witnessing one right now. The Patriots were 4-13 last year. You change coaching staff, you change some personnel. You've got a young quarterback that's much better than anything you've had, over the last 7 years. The NFL's year, it's week to week. I mean, things do change dramatically. The fluke to me, Anthony, means an accident. Like, oh my God, this was not a good football team and they ended up winning 12 games. No, it was an excellent offensive football team. It was top 5 offensively last year in the league, you could argue. And it's an offensive league. And this year they don't have any of those players playing that made that offense elite last year.
We have different definitions because I'm basing it solely off of past history. Now, if we had done this last year and came back again this year, then you could start looking at, a possible trend line. But the trend line is from 2012 to now, garbage.
Yeah, but
So
you're
New
comparing apples and oranges. You're comparing Dan Snyder and Sam Howell and Taylor Heineke and Jeff Beck and Greg Grossman and all of them to a different coaching staff, different ownership, a completely different organization. We started over last year.
Right. So,
I don't think
like
anything that happened previously matters anymore with the new ownership and what they have out there organizationally. So I don't look
about Kansas City. One half doesn't make a trend. One season doesn't make a trend.
I didn't say it made a trend. I just said it wasn't a fluke. A fluke to me means a total one-off, an accident. And I don't think it's an accident. I think we will see seasons like that again in the future if they can stay healthy, and they've got to obviously add to their roster. They've got to build up the roster around, the things they have that are really good. But, let me ask you this, and I want to get to other callers. If let's just say they had been healthy this year, but they had gone 9-8 and missed the postseason, because the schedule was brutal. The defense just wasn't improved enough. They need another offseason to get the defense up to snuff. Would you have called last season a fluke?
No, because they brought back sustained, I guess for lack of a better word, success. If they had gone 4-13 the year before, and then say 8-8. Would you have called that a successful year?
Well, they can't go 8-8, but I understand your point. I said this year it's very possible that they're going to end up with a much lesser record, but we might be as encouraged, if not more encouraged, at the end of the year, based on what we thought they were going to have in the beginning. See, I think when the fact that this season's influenced last season, just view it as it was. You think it's a fluke. I don't. I think that it was more, I think that there was good fortune involved, but I don't think it was an accident. I don't think most teams don't take advantage of it the way they did. Real quickly, go.
Before you let me go. So keep in mind that this is all contingent on the roster that's in place also. So the roster from last year, slight improvements here and there, but it's basically the roster from the year before, minus the injuries. So I was also looking at that.
They flipped that roster by what, a half last year, almost a third to a half,
give or take.
Complete, yeah, a lot of different players last year, right?
It was like 52%, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was like half the players last year were new players. They flipped the roster. They got rid of half of it and flipped the roster by almost a half when all was said and done.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and then
you brought up New England. Who was the New England playing? Last place.
Understood. Place, but have you watched them play? Do you think it's just an accident? Like for a while, I was like, look at their schedule. Now I've watched them a couple of times, and I watched them Sunday against Tampa. I don't think it's a fluke. I think they're legit good. I think they're well coached. I think they actually have a better roster than we had last year. All right, I got to move on. Let's get to Robert in Annapolis. Robert, blip or fluke last year or blip this year?
Well, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I agree with Anthony, but not for the same reason. And whatever words you want to use, fluke, blip, the point is the Commanders were not as good as they were last year, nor are they as bad as they are this year. I think they have a middling coaching staff and a middling talent base. So I really say under different circumstances, they're a 9-8, 8-9, or if you want 8-8-1 team. That's sort of where they are. And when you say the trend can continue if they add to the roster, well, then that's changing the scenario. That's changing a lot of things. But here's the important thing. They're not what many of your fans and callers thought they are or were. They're just not that good. They're not that talented. You have a guy in Chantilly.
No one, just so you know, no callers and nobody said that they were overly talented. The roster's been something we've discussed as being not up to snuff around a great talent at quarterback.
All right, Kevin, perhaps tongue-in-cheek, you had a caller in Chantilly say they were going to go undefeated. You got a caller, I'm not going to use names. You have a caller in Bowie describe the deep.
Billy didn't think they were going to lose again until the year 2035. Yes.
All right, but anyhow.
But I think most reasonable callers, I think most reasonable listeners, we've all discussed that last year they had a roster going into the NFC Championship game in which maybe two players would be interesting to Philadelphia. We knew that the roster wasn't up to snuff. They outkicked their roster last year.
Kevin, you have a caller in Bowie, a regular caller that called the defense stone cold killers. You have a caller in Norfolk that predicts them to win every game.
And how did I handle those calls?
20 points.
You know I didn't agree with that.
They're canines. They're
I don't know what that means.
Canines, so I assume they give. Anyhow, this is just an objective opinion, okay?
Oh.
But look at the team I root for. They were 1-5 and down and out, but I knew they had the talent to rectify the situation. Now, whether they will, you've sold them twice. Whether they will by season's end, we don't know. But you don't. Yeah. Your team, the Commanders, currently does not have the talent that's going to put them back where they were last year.
Obviously, because even the players that made up an average group, they're not playing. We have essentially the equivalent of like the JV team out there trying to play varsities every week. Thanks.
Okay, all right, but look at
I gotta go. We gotta get Denton in here and do our college football segment. We're loaded today with guests. Denton Day next. We'll talk some college football and the college football playoff rankings.
Pick up your book bags. Grab your notebooks. It's time to go on campus with Denton.
Hey, give me my theme music.
So Real quickly, Denton is the host of the pregame and postgame show. What time is the pregame show on Sunday?
I don't believe we have one on Sunday.
Oh,
It's too
why
early.
not?
Yeah, that's
Too
what I was
early?
told. Maybe we'll work on that, but I'll be ready for it regardless. Maybe I'll just go.
It's a 9:30 a.m. kick. People are up and about on Sunday morning.
I was told we do not, but I'll do something. Maybe you and I can just hang out on a Zoom. Just talk it up.
I'm up for it. I will be up. All right. I'm going to ask you real quickly the question that we just asked callers. Barry's Verluga posed it in his column today. Was last year a fluke or is this year a blip?
I would say, well, one, I'm proud of you for eating breakfast. Max told me you're eating breakfast now, so I'm proud of you for that.
No, I eat
Two,
breakfast all the time. We were just talking about I had the hiccups, and I said, like the last 3 days, Max said, you've had the hiccups the last 3 days during the show. And I said, yeah, what is it that I'm eating? I ate a bowl of cereal. And I said, maybe I should add more protein to my breakfast. Which I said, Denton will have the answer on that.
Yeah, you probably should. To answer your question, I would say this is more of a blip. I mean, the roster, as we know, was not constructed beautifully. Even with the injuries, they didn't do enough to address the defensive line situation and get guys to get pressure. But with Jaden hurt, Jaden masked a lot of the problems last year. So with no one to mask the problems, you're just kind of seeing how flawed the roster is. I don't really have a doubt that they're going to be able to, adjust next year and be good. But this has been a little underwhelming and very disappointing.
Yeah. It's November 13th and the Madrid game's coming up and the season feels completely lost. Although I actually think they might have a chance next on Sunday. The Dolphins came off the high of beating Buffalo. Maybe we catch them at the right time. All right, let's talk some college football as we do with Denton every Thursday in this spot. Of course, you can follow Denton on X, on Twitter at The Denton Day. He's the host of college football's overtime show and sometimes pregame show on Sirius XM, and he's the host, as I mentioned, of the Commanders pre and post on this station, the Team 980, and also our sister station 106.7, The Fan. Last week we had some great football games. Penn State nearly pulled it off against Indiana. The catch was just amazing. I'm going to tell you right now, I think that Oregon-Iowa game and in that rain and cold at Kinnick was one of the most entertaining games of the season. Your takeaways from last week as it relates to kind of the big picture of the college football playoff.
So I'm with you. I love that Oregon-Iowa game. You kind of alert me to some issues that I've had with Oregon, that's they haven't been able to play great offense, at least when it comes to passing the football. They didn't get a pass because that Iowa game was cold. It was rainy. You're on the road. But I still look at that Wisconsin game, and I'm like, man, they have some strength.
Your phone's breaking up. We got to get Denton's phone cleared up here. Let's see if we can get you to a better spot, because I don't want to miss any of this important information. Denton really, this is his passion as much as anything else, and he does a great job. If you're out and about, seriously, on a Saturday or a Saturday night, tune in to Sirius XM's college football overtime show. He does a great job on that show. Do we have you? Are we clear? No. We are? All right. Go ahead. Continue.
All right. So I love that. I love the Oregon-Iowa game. I mean, I feel a completely different way about Indiana now than I did this time last week because they got pushed by Penn State. And I kind of thought they were going to run the score up on Penn State. Now, in fairness, I thought that was the best second half that Penn State had played probably this entire year, like even before Franklin got fired and Drew Allen got hurt. I mean, they were locked in for the entirety of that fourth quarter in a way that they really hadn't been. But, man, I thought Indiana was going to run them, and they just did not. Ohio State, as I watch them more and more, it stinks because they're not playing great teams, but that team is so good. They have so many different ways they can beat you offensively. They still can't run the ball well, but when you got Jeremiah Smith out there on one side and Carnell Tate on the other side, that Ohio State team is so dangerous.
All right, the rankings, the latest rankings, Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, Texas A&M 3. I'm curious, did you think there was a chance A&M would jump Indiana?
A little bit, but this is just not how they operate. The College Football Playoff Committee has shown us over the course of years, they don't really love making tough decisions. They really like it when things play out for them. So my guess is that those rankings are going to stay the exact same at the top three until somebody loses. And we know eventually one of them will, because Ohio State and Indiana are going to play each other, but they're not going to make any sort of tough decision unless they absolutely need to. And right now they don't need to.
All right, we've got a couple of big games on Saturday. In the 3:30 window, Oklahoma at Bama. Bama's a 6.5-point favorite. Bama struggled a little bit with LSU. LSU's defense played well. Nussmeier basically got benched. By the way, he is now maybe a day 3 pick. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, this has been a tough year for him. I don't think it's fully his fault because that offensive line has been so brutal, but he hasn't put anything good on film this year, like at all. I mean, he had one good throw in that game against Clemson that didn't even count because the guy, they say dropped it. He didn't drop it, but they say he dropped it. He's had a really, really tough go. Bama can't run the ball, and that's a real problem. I like Ty Simpson. You like Ty Simpson. Eventually, they're going to have to help him out, and they just cannot establish the run. And sooner or later, teams are going to start to realize that if they just take away the passing game, they're going to be able to stifle the offense.
And they're playing a good defensive team in Oklahoma's team. So how do you see that game?
I think that one's going to be close. What do you say the line is right now? 6.5?
6.5.
That might be one where I'm
6.5.
riding with Oklahoma because that defense flies around. Now, on the flip side, I don't think Oklahoma's offense is spectacular. They still have a lot of flaws. Matiers has a pretty big accuracy issue with a lot of the throws that he makes down the field, but he is a gamer, so I think they'll be able to keep it close. I kind of like Oklahoma covering the 6.5. I thought that number was way shorter.
Yeah, I like Oklahoma's chances too. I really like their chances. I think you're right about Bama, and you got to be able to run the football in a game like this. What about Saturday night? Texas has moved into the 10th spot in the college football playoff rankings. Arch is getting better. They've had the break since the win over Vandy, which got, too close, at the end after they dominated. And they're at Georgia. I think a lot of people thought Mississippi State would hang in there with Georgia last week. They blew them out. How do you see this game?
This is where Georgia ends the fun that we've had with Texas. Because right now that's a fun story, right? Like Arch is playing better. They were the number one pick entering the season. They had the fall, and now they're rising from the ashes. They're a fun story to get behind, but Georgia's going to end it. I mean, Georgia's a really good football team. They're playing really good offense. I like Gunnar Stockton, or I like him more now than I did before. He's still not my favorite quarterback, but they're putting together some really strong performances on offense, and they're realizing some of the weapons they have. Zachariah Branch had a great game last week. And, we've been very familiar with him back to his days at USC, but now seeing what he can do with Georgia, I mean, that's a legit playmaker and a legit weapon that they have on offense. So I think they end the Texas run here, and I think they give them their third loss of the year and knock them out.
I think we're going to see two road teams, two of the newer SEC teams go into Tuscaloosa and Athens and play really well. It would not surprise me if Texas plays well in this game. I think that line's a bit short, personally. So what's going to happen in the ACC? I mean, it's a complete and absolute mess in that conference. Virginia lost last week to Wake. They lost their quarterback in the game. As you know, I was on Wake for the limit in that game. Who wins this league? Who represents the ACC in the playoff?
I hope it's going to be Georgia Tech, but I would just point out to you, in the playoffs, I don't think is a guarantee. There's an avenue to where if a team like Duke, maybe wins the conference, I don't know if the committee, maybe just by association with the ACC, they'll rank them higher than the two group of five champions. But I think there is an avenue to where a USF wins the American and then potentially JMU wins the Sun Belt and then outranks whoever wins the ACC, and we get two G5 representatives in the playoff.
So explain that, because the Power Four, they have an automatic bid. It's not an automatic bid, but it's borderline automatic unless there are two beyond the Power Five that are ranked higher than that league's champion, correct?
So right now, the auto bids are to the 5 highest ranked conference champions. They're not specifically for the Power Four. That's kind of what they've been discussing this offseason about making sure if we expand that there is representation guaranteed for all of the Power Four. So there is an avenue to where we get a Big 12 champion, an SEC champ, a Big Ten, and then potentially 2 Group of 5, depending on how the ACC plays out. Now, I would say that's unlikely. It's more of a fun thing to kick around in the month of November because I do think Georgia Tech is likely going to run the table and win the ACC, and they'll be in. But that's just something to keep in mind as we go towards the stretch of the season, the final few weeks, that is a possibility that we could see. And I think it would excite a lot of people. I think it would drive the television companies absolutely wild.
JMU, and by the way, I think USF would be dangerous in a playoff game against anybody on that first weekend. They can
Brown,
really
definitely
score. I love that quarterback, Brown.
Yeah, it'd be a completely different element than what we saw last year with Genty. Like, we knew that Ashton Genty was really good, but you stopped Boise State by stopping him. Byron Brown can do a bunch of different things. He kind of is like a Josh Allen prototype, albeit a lot lesser than what we see of Josh Allen, but he does a lot of those things really, really well. He can throw down the field, and he will run you over. So he would be very, very fun to see in a playoff game.
How good is Texas Tech? Can they win the whole thing?
No, they're good. They can get to the final. I don't think if they match up with an Ohio State or a Texas A&M, I don't think they could beat them. Maybe they can hang with Indiana, but defensively they're good. Offensively, they're really good. It's a question of protecting the quarterback in Darren Morton. And we know he's playing injured, but can they keep him upright when you start to play against teams that have a bunch of dudes on that defensive line? And, to the credit of BYU, that's a well put together football team. But if you're looking at the talent from a talent perspective, they just don't have the guys that a team like Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M do on the defensive line. So I don't know that they'll be able to protect their quarterback against great teams.
Amazingly, we're in the countdown here to the final 3 regular season weeks of college football. Kind of depressing, and it really does move quickly. And then we'll get championship weekend. But as we sit here with 3 weeks left, is there a team outside the mix right now that you've been looking at that you still think has an outside shot of making the playoff?
I would say right now, we'll do a 180. I would say right now that's Miami. I do think there's an avenue for them to get in as an at-large.
They have to be in the ACC title game, though, right?
I think they could get in as an at-large, but things would really need to break in their favor with a lot of the SEC teams that currently have 2 losses or 1 loss getting another 2 or 3. I think they would get in over a 3-loss SEC team, assuming that team is not Texas. If Texas beats either Georgia or A&M, I think Texas is going to get in. But I do think there's a potential for them to get in at large once the College Football Playoff Committee realizes, oh, you know what, that Notre Dame win was a big win. And they play Pittsburgh. So, that Pittsburgh win, that is a big win. They beat Florida State when they were ranked. I think when you see their full resume together, assuming they start to play better, that there's still a chance they could get in as an at-large.
I think they need Pitt. I think they need Pitt to enter that season finale hosting Miami after wins over Notre Dame and Georgia Tech. If they went to Pitt after Pitt beat Notre Dame and Georgia Tech, and they beat NC State and Virginia Tech, I would agree with you. I'm just keeping my eye. What?
If Pitt beats just Notre Dame, I think Miami gets a much better shot. Because right now, we've talked about the fact that Notre Dame is so high above Miami doesn't make sense. So if you give them a 3rd loss and then Miami beats the team that beat them after having beaten Notre Dame, I do think that puts them in a good position.
I think SC and Michigan are still teams just to keep an eye on. Michigan's going to go into that Ohio State game without another loss. They'll be 9-2 going into that game. And we know right now there may be a mental block against Michigan. It used to be the other way, but it's 4 years running. Imagine if Michigan were to knock off Ohio State in the season finale and make the Big Ten title game.
That'd be huge. And they can do it. Bryce Underwood's been playing a lot better recently.
Much better. All right. Thanks.
Yep. See ya.
Denton Day, everybody. Up next, we'll talk some Maryland football. Find out what the deal is with Mike Loxley in College Park with our friend Jeff Erman. Right after these words from a few of our sponsors. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the Team980.com. So, as we talked about yesterday, Maryland football's lost 5 in a row. They're 4-5 after that 4-0 start. Mike Locksley was asked the other day in his press conference whether or not he believes his job is on the line. He said no. He thinks he deserves to be the Maryland football coach. A lot of fans disagree. Jeff Erman covers this program like nobody else does. He is, by the way, as a recent basketball coach described him, he's the TMZ of Maryland sports. He's the founder of Inside MD Sports, and you can follow Jeff on X on Twitter at Jeff_Erman. So I'm catching up on what the AD Jim Smith said about Mike Locksley's future. But let's just get right to it. I want you, for those that aren't familiar with the situation, to kind of just outline, where he's been, what his record is in the Big Ten, how many years he's been here, what it would require to actually buy him out, et cetera, and then the appetite for doing it among boosters.
Yeah, Kevin, I think, the record, if I recall, 16-40 in the Big Ten. There's I think, an asterisk next to that to some extent, just because the shape the program was in when he took over was really bad on and off the field. They had won, I think, 13 games the previous 3 years combined. They were coming off Jordan McNair's tragic death and all the controversy surrounding that. So the first few years you have to give him a pass, and then he had a good, a solid 3-year run of going to bowl games, winning them each of those 3 years, and then things have really kind of fallen off the table the past couple of years. And so now, you have a situation where he already didn't have a great deal of political capital or, support from the fans. Obviously, after last year, they went 4-8 overall, 1-8 in the Big Ten, and then you get off to a hot start again, familiar sight, get off to a hot start 4-0 against lesser opponents. People's hopes go up, and then, that 3-game stretch of blown leads in the fourth quarter, and then 2 more losses coming off of that. And now, you're staring down the possibility of an 8-game losing streak to end the season, which would be back-to-back 1-8 seasons in the Big Ten if that happens, if they don't win another game. So, it's not hard to figure out why, there's so much discussion around his job security.
So let's talk about whether or not something could be done. I said yesterday on the show, I said nothing speaks to the apathy for Maryland football more than it doesn't appear as if there's a booster or any interest in paying what really amounts to a paltry buyout comparatively to other college football programs at $13 million. I mean, you and I both know this is not only a basketball first school, it's recently become almost a basketball only school. So talk about, what it would take and whether or not there's a legitimate appetite for it within the people that matter, within the group that matters.
Yeah, I'm sure a few boosters would pitch in on that, but, I think a lot of them are tapped out at this point. There's been so many asks of them the past few years, especially with NIL and, getting a lot of donations for basketball and football NIL before revenue share started. The money that people donated for the new practice facility in basketball and other facilities. So, you might get something from some of those people, and some of them are also, I think, would not give because they like Mike Locksley.
Right.
So I think if Maryland were to make a move for that $13 million, which, like you said, is, it sounds like a lot in general, but I think it's from what I read is the 35th highest buyout in the country. So there's a lot, there's many coaches even at non-power programs with higher buyouts. You'd probably have to fund it through the school somehow or some other creative way. I don't think, like you said, there's not enough there to fund that through a grassroots kind of deal like a lot of schools do.
You wrote in your most recent column on Inside MD Sports that Jim Smith, the new athletic director, made eye-opening comments about the Mike Locksley situation. What did he say?
Yeah, so he's been very supportive of Mike throughout the season, hasn't really, left any window there in terms of anything you can interpret as potentially making a move on him. And then the other day, a reporter, Taylor Lyons from the Baltimore Sun, asked him about Mike's job security, and he was a lot less firm. You know, he said it would be silly to make a decision now. He's got 3 more games to coach, basically. So, you know, that's a huge shift from his previous talk. That, you know, obviously that talk came when Maryland was 4-0 or 4-1, 4-2, whatever. And, you know, he's not Jim Smith's a smart guy. He sees the fan base. He understands, you know, the support and how it's waned and how tough it would be to sell, you know, bringing back a coach who potentially went 1-8 back-to-back Big Ten years. That's not anything specific to Mike Locksley. That's just a thing where you just don't really see people do that. You know, it's a very tough sell to the fans.
Jeff Erman joining us. The problem, Jeff, you and I have talked about this over the years, is like, even if they first of all, it would be the worst kind of off season to be looking for a new football coach with all of the openings. That aside, it's just not an attractive job, right?
Compared to the, you know, that top 7 or 8 that are open right now, you know, Penn State, Florida, even Oklahoma State, those schools, it's not. But, you know, compared to others, you know, Mike Locksley makes $6 million a year. So it might not be attractive to the hottest commodities out there. You're probably not going to get those guys anyways because there's so many jobs. So you're going to have to, if you made a move, you would have to find, you know, an up-and-comer or somebody who's not necessarily the hottest name out there. But, you know, I think you could find somebody. It's all about the right. I mean, look at Cignetti at Indiana. He's a unicorn in what he's doing, but still,
right.
you can find guys. You know, how many people knew his name 2 years ago? So, you know, it's not by far not the most attractive job in the Big Ten or SEC, but it all comes down to just finding the right person.
Yeah, I mean, I think I get it. You know, they're capable because they're in the Big Ten and because of the revenue that's generated off of the media dollars. Being a football school in the Big Ten, you can afford to pay the football coach well, and that's great. But when people view Maryland as a Power 4 football program, it just is not. You know, I love it, and I wish it were different. But the revenue's terrible, you know, in terms of non-media revenue. I think you've written before that it's, you know, near the bottom, or they're certainly way down the list of Power 4 schools. We know what the crowds look like there for even a big game. It's a pro market. That's part of it. You know, a lot of these places are in college towns, and we're in a pro market, and really 2 pro markets. You know, I just within the industry, this isn't like a coveted job.
No, it's definitely not a, you know, plug and play kind of situation by any stretch. Maryland has struggled for much of the past 20 years, you know, since Ralph Friedgen's first few years. You know, DJ Durkin, obviously, Randy Edsall. It hasn't gone well overall. And then, as you mentioned, you know, the situation right now, it's very Maryland actually to, you know, maybe have to be in the market for a coach on the 1 year when there's like 1 million high profile openings and you have this really, really talented freshman class and quarterback that you don't want to lose. So you have those 2 things, you know, it's just kind of fitting in terms of Maryland's fortunes over the year in football.
Yeah. So for those that don't know what he's talking about, they've got talent and they're true freshmen. Now they've lost some of those players on defense. Because I don't know about you, but Sidney Stewart, the moment I watched him, I'm like, he's a Sunday player eventually. They've got those kinds of players. You know, Malik Washington to me is a bit, you know, I'm not sure yet. I don't know how you feel. But not only that, right? They've got an unbelievable class coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this freshman class, you know, I've been following Maryland for 30 years or so, and this might be the most talented freshman class I've seen. Malik Washington, like you said, unfinished product. You don't know that he's going to become a star, but clearly has the potential. And, you know, I can't make too many judgments on him, you know, in terms of his flaws this year. True freshman starting at quarterback in the Big Ten is almost impossible. So he's going to need some time to get polished. But then, you know, like you said, Sidney Stewart, to me, you know, he looks like a first-round pick potentially. Zahir Mathis on the other side, a defensive end. He has the same appearance and there's 5 or 6 other big-time talented kids in that freshman class. So I would not want to be Jim Smith right now.
Where does their incoming 2026 class rank right now?
Well, that one's, it's not nearly as good so far. It's very top heavy in terms of just one guy, Zion
Right.
Ely, number 2 player in the country for next year, defensive end from Baltimore, number 1 edge player in the country. Otherwise, they've got some nice players, but it doesn't have the cachet that this year's class has by any stretch. And, it probably won't anytime soon until all this uncertainty is settled when the season ends.
So we'll finish up this particular topic with this question. What do you think should happen, and what do you think will happen?
It's hard to say what should happen because I don't know what the final result is going to be. 3 games left.
Well, they're not going to win more than one of these, right?
It's unlikely. Yeah, it's very unlikely. I don't know. It's tough because I think Mike has done a decent job overall. He has a lot of love for the university. He came back and took over during a time when no one else wanted it. And it is a really hard job. You have to judge the results kind of on a sliding scale at Maryland when you're just running this constant uphill battle, trying to compete with all these bigger name, more resourced programs. In terms of what will happen, I think clearly if he doesn't win another game, that'll be it. I can't see anybody bringing back a coach after back-to-back 1-8 Big Ten records. It's just not really a thing that happens, and you're not going to have the fans. If he wins one game, that's tough. I think I would still place the odds more strongly on them making a move. I think if he only wins one more game, if somehow they win 2, then, I think there's a good chance he comes back. But, no one has stated that to me precisely. That's just what I've gathered.
Yeah. And, you've already pointed out, and I've pointed out a few times, they are so close to having 3 more wins and, being a 7-2 football team. They blew 3 fourth quarter leads in 3 consecutive games against Washington, Nebraska, and UCLA. All right, real quickly while I have you on, last Friday night, Buzz's first real home game at Xfinity. Not a bad atmosphere, certainly not the best, as we both know. But man, did they struggle to score. It's very early. They've got all these new players. But what's your early hunch on Maryland basketball this year?
I think, and the offense is a big question. Outside shooting, obviously, and interior depth. In that Georgetown game, they had 5 field goals in the first 28 minutes, which, I'm not sure I've seen that before. Right. Injuries have hurt too. They've had a ton of injuries. They're starting to get more healthy. They still need to get back Solomon Washington, who's, an elite defender who would make not a huge scorer, but would make a big impact on winning. I think basically my view is the same as it was before the year. They look like a bubble team to me. I'm not sure this is an NCAA tournament team. It could be. Even Buzz Williams has seemingly gone out of his way for the past month or 2 to say he doesn't know if they're any good, basically, or he doesn't know how good they're going to be. But his teams tend to peak later in the season.
Right.
And especially with this one, when you consider most of these guys, some of them played together at Texas A&M, a few of them, but otherwise it's a brand new 15-man roster all trying to integrate together. So, I don't think there's any snap judgments to be made, but there's definitely some real concerns about, like I said, scoring, interior depth, and 3-point shooting.
They play Marquette on Saturday at 2:00 right here on the Team 980. That's one of Buzz's previous stops. That game's in Milwaukee. By the way, he's done a good job recruiting as well, right? Like next year's class, top 20-ish.
Yeah, he has done a good job. The big domino will fall next week. That's Baba Latitude, kid from Silver Spring, 5-star, down to Maryland, Arkansas, and Georgetown, basically. So, I feel like they actually do have a pretty legit chance there. And, as much as some people have kind of turn down their optimism based on watching these first few games. I think if he gets a guy like that, all of a sudden, you might see a statue outside the stadium, outside Xfinity for him, because we both know how many of those guys have gotten away from Maryland over the years.
If he ends up signing the guy from literally plays public school, Montgomery County, Blake High School, we've talked about this player before. He is, already mocked as a future top 5 NBA pick. If he lands this kid, is that a top 5 class next year?
Probably. It's hard with basketball. Football class rankings are much more accurate, much more scientific, because you have so many more players, whereas with basketball, Maryland might have 4 guys and another school might have 7, so they're going to be higher rated as a class. But it would be one of the best. He's rated a little bit higher than Derek Queen was coming out of high school, just to give some context on, how prized he is. So,
you think there's a good chance?
Yeah, I think I think it's them versus Arkansas. Some people think Georgetown's in the mix. The people I've talked to in the area don't really think the Hoyas are a big threat, but that's the kind of guy that you can not only on the court, but can really generate a lot of excitement, obviously, from the fan base.
Yeah, and look, this is a kid who, clearly they are a close family, close-knit. He went to DeMatha, I think, as a freshman, but they didn't like the long commute. They wanted to stay closer to home. Maybe this whole staying closer to home works out for the Terps, and they get this kid. That's next year. That's not this year. And he, by the way, was a 2027 number 1 class guy. He reclassed and is still – I'm looking at ESPN's top 100 right now. He's number 8 in the class. All right. What else? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered it all, man.
All
Looking forward to seeing what they do at Marquette on Friday. Probably give us a little bit better idea what we're looking at, but
It's
I don't
Saturday,
think we'll
right?
know. Or excuse me, Saturday. I don't know what will.
Yeah, it's
really
Saturday
make
right in the middle of the college football day, but it'll be on 980, and I think it's on Peacock, actually. I think the game's a Peacock game. Thanks, Jeff, as always. Hope you're well.
Absolutely. Thanks
Wish
for
you
having
the
me.
best. By the way, Derek Queen last night, 26.7 rebounds, 4 assists for the Pelicans. He is balling as a rookie. All right, Charch next. From Mark. Mark writes, Charch is my favorite of your regulars. The premise is fantasy football, and you both do everything you can to not talk fantasy football. I think you guys could do an 80s or 90s pop culture music show or just 70s NFL trivia. Brilliant. Thank you, Mark, for that. Charch is with us in his normal spot every Thursday at 11:25 at Paul Charchian on X, on Twitter. One of the preeminent longtime fantasy football experts. His podcasts are Fantasy Football Weekly and Chop. We do end up talking a lot about things that have nothing to do with fantasy football. So let me start with a fantasy football question. Give me the craziest stat. Like that, heading into this weekend, a running back's yards after contact or something about Jordan Love or whatever. Give me something.
Oh, I've got it.
Okay.
I've got it.
Yep.
This is history making right now. It's on pace to be history making. The Cincinnati defense looks like it is going to be the worst tight end defense in the history of the NFL. They are on pace to allow 23 tight end touchdowns. Now, I know that's not something that most people have got any real understanding of, like, is 23 a lot or is a little? I've already said it's a lot, but get this. Most seasons, the worst tight end defense in the league will have 10, 11, 12 tight end touchdowns allowed.
Right.
The Bengals have played 9 games. They already have 12 tight end touchdowns allowed, on pace for 23. Nobody's ever come close to that. And it's not just tight ends. They're also allowing the most tight end yards as well. And what we've seen over the years is schematically, we'll see this not change all year. Like, teams are just set on how they play. They are willing to give up tight end touchdowns for the sake of not giving up something else somewhere else. Like, the Bengals don't give up a lot of wide receiver yards. And where this gets fascinating for this weekend, Kevin, they play the Steelers.
Yeah,
It's
they play
annoying.
7 tight ends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They got Jonnu Smith, Pat Fryermuth, and the elephantine Darnell Washington that you and I have talked about in the past. We love that kid. It is a fascinating and also annoying matchup because normally we just pound whatever tight end is playing Cincinnati. Now you got to figure out which of the 3 you might want to play, if any.
Yeah, earlier in the week after Detroit's, as my film breakdown guy called it, Washington was basically the scout team for Detroit on Sunday with the scripted stuff that always works. I think Cincinnati's defense is worse, but barely. Now, Washington's is all-time bad right now for the franchise. They're certainly trending in that direction. Yeah. In part because they've been decimated with injuries, but it wasn't going to be a good defense to begin with. But man, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. There are some horrific defensive football teams in the league this year. Cincinnati, Washington, Dallas kind of lead the way, I would guess.
Yes, and the whole league is different this year in that we've got the haves and the have-nots in a way that we haven't seen before. And the Jets really cementing their role in this when they've made the 2 trades, Quinn and Williams, Sauce Gardner. They are clearly in the have-not category. So we've got these really good teams, and we've got these 5 or 6 teams that are just dead in the water. And unfortunately, your team is one of them. I don't like talking that way about your squad.
Oh, no, there's no resurrecting this group right now. No chance.
No. I think it's just where you finish in the draft. What are you going to do? And we're already at that stage, unfortunately. So yeah, there are just some terrible defenses out there, and we've been picking on them. We'll continue to do that from a fantasy standpoint, and that's what we do here. This will be fun to watch, though, to see if I would love to see Darnell Washington get, they throw to him in the end zone. They love that big body. Rodgers does. I'd love to get that kid a touchdown.
He's got to be one of the biggest tight ends in NFL history in terms of combined height and weight. We've seen height before. I don't know if we've seen somebody that big. What do you do when a player like A.J. Brown tells you, drop me from your fantasy team?
Wow, right? I mean, this is we rarely get this. I've got a term in which it's called the sabotage drop. Have we talked about this before, Kevin?
No.
The sabotage drop. Okay, so It's a term I invented about 10 years ago. It's when you drop a good a big name fantasy player from your roster outright because you believe that big name player will get scooped up by somebody else and become their problem. And they'll have to pay something to get that player, right? They either got to give up a waiver priority or they got to give up some of their bidding account or whatever, right? So you drop this big name frustrating player, sabotage drop. It's the boldest of fantasy football moves. Totally incompatible with the innate cowardice of 95% of fantasy managers who would never do a sabotage drop. They'll play this thing out to the bitter end before they'll drop a big name player because so many fantasy players don't want to be wrong on that. But if you had dropped A.J. Brown after week 1 when he had 8 yards, you'd have been better off for it. And whoever picked up A.J. Brown would have been worse for it. So there's real temptation to do that. As your listeners probably know, and I know you do, Kevin, A.J. Brown played Madden on Twitch for like 90 straight minutes. And if you give an athlete an open mic for 90 minutes, something, it's going to say something they probably shouldn't. And in his case, he said a couple of things interesting.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier on
the S show. Yeah.
Look, I think the Eagles are built to handle this situation. Like, I don't think there's like a lot of concern if you're an Eagles fan. He's probably not going to be on the team next year, but he'll still step up and have a big game when they need him to have a big game. Like, by the way, he did in Minnesota a few weeks ago.
He did. That's right. We're only that far removed. It isn't much.
Right.
Next 3 games, speaking of opponents, the Eagles get the Lions, the Cowboys, and the Bears. Here's where the Lions, Cowboys, and Bears rank against wide receivers in fantasy points allowed. 27th, 30th, and dead last. This is a
Detroit had to move up after last week, I would assume.
they did, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Went from 28th to 27th, maybe. So do you think, Kevin, for players at A.J. Brown's level, does the squeaky wheel generally get greased?
In that organization, I just don't think they care. They're going to do whatever it takes for that particular game to win the game. In Minnesota, it meant taking deep shots against Brian Flores' all-out zero, coverage blitzes and man coverage on the outside. They took those shots. They hit them. Now they're getting into the ability to run the football. The other night, they didn't have to do much. There were 2 plays. It was the Barkley check down that he spun out of and went 41 yards on, and then the touchdown pass that came, I think, the next play to Devontae Smith, and they won the game. I don't think it's a big deal for them.
Had to do. Yeah. The organization does have, they've been through so much tumult over the last 5 years. I do think there's some of that calmness built into them because they've been there and done that. But also, your offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo, is getting murdered by the Eagles fans and press.
Yeah,
and it's
like Brian Johnson was a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Exactly like Brian Johnson was. And that guy he ended up out after 1 year.
He's here. He's on our staff here.
I didn't remember that. What's he doing?
He's part of the offensive staff.
How's that working?
He works. He's under Cliff Kingsbury. He apparently they love him. Apparently he's very good at clock management, game management stuff. He helps Quinn out with that. But let me just mention, and I'll add to that. This time last year, we were only about a week or 2 removed from Sirianni's got to go.
Yeah, and then they put together a phenomenal second half of the season, obviously a Super Bowl victory. You talk about clock management, by the way. Look at that play with the Eagles is stunning that they had at the end of the game where it's 4th and 1. They're ahead, 30 seconds left, midfield, where any normal person would have either, probably punted for sure, or at least run the ball to keep the clock going. And instead they threw the Hail Mary to A.J. Brown and it wasn't close. There's something to be said for having somebody on staff who is a clock management specialist because apparently the Eagles don't have that.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that over the years, and Sirianni's not the best at it. That was crazy. I don't even know because I don't even follow. We all watch football. We probably can guess what the analytics say, but I felt like in that situation, you got to punt the football because they got no timeouts left, and they haven't been able to move the football without incorporating the run game and you're going to take 6, 7, 8 seconds off the clock with a punt. So anyway, in that game, Jordan Love, man, I'm at a loss for him because his best is really good. And his worst, and it's usually decision making, is horrible. From a real football standpoint and from a fantasy standpoint, your thoughts on Jordan Love?
It's funny. 3 games ago, I thought he played the best game of his career, and then the
against
last
Pittsburgh.
The last 2 weeks have been dreadful, horrible decision making. Now he is hampered. If you want to make excuses, you can. And trust me, there is a lot of excuse making in Green Bay right now. His receivers dropped too many passes. They've had a lot of injuries to the receivers, and now they're without Tucker Kraft. That stuff adds some legitimacy to Jordan Love's struggles. But this is a guy who's been goose-egged in consecutive games. And, this isn't just fantasy. There's a point at which not throwing touchdowns is not just a fantasy conversation. At the end of the day, you need your quarterback to score points. If you go back 20 games for Jordan Love, he has thrown 0 or 1 touchdown in 13 of those 20 games.
Wow.
And you just have to say, at some point you need scoring from the position. And he just hasn't been able to bring it all together. Last year he had the groin injury, and that looked like that affected his mechanics and he wasn't running, but he doesn't have that this year. And that groin injury was a very popular excuse for his inconsistent play last year. He doesn't have that now. He will be playing without an excellent center, Elton Jenkins, on IR. That is a huge loss as well for him. So there's a lot going wrong right now. They don't have, and they don't have everybody they'd like to have among their wide receivers. But honestly, get in line. Washington doesn't either. There's, at this stage of the season, I just don't think there's enough valid excuses to explain why Jordan Love sails open receivers, throws to covered receivers. He just doesn't look like anything close to the second highest paid quarterback.
I'm curious if you feel the same way, and maybe you don't, but I want to hear what your answer is. So when I came in here on Tuesday, I said, I'm not sure we watched, some sort of preview of the NFC Championship game. I think that comes this Sunday when Seattle plays the Rams. I think those are the 2 best teams in the NFC. What do you say?
Seattle's the best team in the NFC. I think they're going to win this game. But here's what's great about both to these teams. Name me a weakness on either squad.
They don't have one.
They don't have one. Yes. And this is part of why. And if I have to pick Seattle or the Rams to represent, if I've got to pick any team to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, I'm taking Seattle. They've got, I love Sam Darnold. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba, Rashid Shaheed, Cooper Kupp to throw to. They've got 2 tight ends that they can throw to. They've got a running game that's effective. The offensive line's much improved. And then the run defense is fantastic. They've got young cornerbacks that are solid as well. At the end of the day, as I think about Rams and Seattle, the 2 best teams in the NFC, which quarterback is more likely to be standing at the end of the year for the playoff run? And I think I'm not going to take Matthew Stafford at 40 years old, the back injury coming into the season. I think Sam Darnold's just more likely to stay upright. So I kind of lean that direction. What do you think on Rams?
I think that I think these are the 2 best teams, not only in the NFC, they might be the 2 best teams in professional football right now. But to me, it's like, if you're going to ask me Stafford or Darnold, it's Stafford, and it's not close. And if you're going to ask me at this point, McVay or McDonald, and by the way, I think he's doing a great job in Seattle, and they are a very well-coached defensive football team. I'm still going to take Sean McVay, Stafford, Nakua, Adams, and that group in a playoff game. Now, we'll see where it ends up being played, because Detroit and Philly are going to have something to say about that, more likely than not, in terms of the top seed. Maybe Tampa as well. We'll see. I mean, it's a crazy NFC in terms of how the seeding will shake out, because Seattle or the Rams, one of those 2 teams is going to be a 5 seed. And on the road at Tampa or Detroit or somewhere like that, week 1 of the playoffs. So,
and Kevin, so much of this conversation goes back to Minnesota last year and Sam Darnold. Darnold in week 18, final game of the year, regular season game of the year, he needed a Vikings win to go to the 1 seed, and a Vikings loss dropped him to the 5 seed. And that ended up being, I think, much of the difference in the playoffs. People seem to assume that because Sam Darnold got sacked, I think 15 times in those 2 games and played poorly, that he automatically will in Seattle. I don't think that that's necessarily going to happen. And I don't think it's fair to think that just because the Vikings offensive line was terrible, they got, outcoached, they got outplayed in a million different ways, that Sam Darnold is necessarily going to unravel in the playoffs for a different team with more surrounding talent offensively, defensively than he had last year. I don't think Sam Darnold necessarily is going to unwind in the playoffs like people assume he will, just because he did.
Yeah, it was pretty ugly, and then it got even uglier, in Arizona when they played the playoff game against the Rams after the Wildfires, moved that game there.
That's right.
A friend of mine pointed this out to me the other day, and I didn't really realize this about Seattle. Their wins are against the Cardinals twice, the Commanders, the Texans, the Jags, the Saints, and they beat Pittsburgh in week 2 when their rookie running back, who was back on kickoffs, left the kickoff in the end zone, and
right.
Seattle
Caleb
scored, and that was
Johnson.
the game.
Yes.
That was the game.
Yes.
And I thought that was interesting. Now they play the Rams twice. They still play the Niners to close the season. They play, by the way, they play the Colts. I mean, Seattle plays Indy this year in December.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to prove it. I think they're legit good. Don't get me wrong. I think they're legit good. And I think we're going to see the 2 best teams on Sunday at SoFi. All right. What else do we? I wanted to ask you about the other big game on Sunday. There are a couple of them, but the Broncos and the Chiefs in the first of their 2 that'll ultimately probably decide the AFC West. The Chargers may have something to say about that. But how good is Denver's defense? And then what do you do if you have Mahomes?
Yeah, this is a massive game for the Broncos. With a win here, Denver pretty much ensures the end to the Chiefs' 9-year run as AFC West champs. And if that happens, Kevin, it'll be fascinating to see how the Chiefs respond in the playoffs without home field throughout. Patrick Mahomes has played 17 playoff games, 3 on the road.
Yeah, but he answered that question 2 years ago, though. Going to Buffalo, going to Baltimore.
He did. In fairness, he did. I still think this will produce a challenge that is much more uphill for him than that one necessarily did. Although those are absolutely quality wins for sure.
Yeah, because that was the first time. Remember, he had played every playoff game at home, and then they were the 3 seed, I think it was, and they had to go. They played the frigid game against the Dolphins, and then they went to Buffalo and to Baltimore and won the Super Bowl. I mean, nothing is impossible for that group. Like I still expect them to be in the Super Bowl, whether they are a division winner or not.
Yeah. I don't, but they're not that. When everything's clicking for the Chiefs, they do look like the best team in football. It's just they go stretches where it just doesn't all come together. And this matchup absolutely fascinating. I mean, what a statement win for the Broncos if they can get it here without Patrick Surtain, who's obviously great. Yeah. But this is to get some historic perspective on this Broncos pass rush. It's nuts. They have the highest quarterback pressure rate in the next gen era, which goes back about 20 years.
Wow.
Their pressure rate is 43%. I mean, that's crazy. You're getting pressure. They're getting pressure that often. And
isn't their sack total like 20 ahead of number 2 at this point? Something like that.
That's a great question. I don't have that in front of me. It's going to be close to that. Let me mention this: that 43% pressure rate. Patrick Mahomes this year is 1-3 when the opposing pressure rate is even 25%.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
46 sacks.
46 sacks. Yeah, Steelers are next at 32.
Yeah,
sacks.
14 more than number 2.
That's margin, right?
That's a massive margin. Now the Steelers have played 1 less game, but still, yeah, that's a massive. That's unbelievable on the pressure rate. They are loaded. I mean, we've been talking about Nick Bonito all season long and what he's been doing, but Cooper and Franklin Myers, they're schemed up well, clearly. And by the way, they need that, don't you think? I'm not confident in Bo Nix for the offense.
No, the offense has been extremely inconsistent, especially through the air with Bo Nix, who honestly, has regressed from the version of Bo Nix that we saw in the second half of last year. And a lot of the reason I firmly believe is because they don't let him run anymore. Last year, Sean Payton had Bo Nix out running a lot. And that, as you've seen up close, when you've got a quarterback who gives you everything that rushing threat can provide, it's a huge difference for how defenses have to scheme for you. And most games, Bo Nix is getting 0 designed runs. And that is a big change from the usage from last year. And I don't know that that's made him a worse passer, but he is a worse passer this year. The accuracy is not the same. Throwing on the run is not the same. It has been a labor through the air for this team. They don't really have a go-to receiver anymore. Cortland Sutton was sort of that guy, but he's fallen off. Troy Franklin's trying to improve. It's just been very, very inconsistent for that Broncos offense, unless they're playing a terrible defense like the Giants, the Cowboys. Whenever they play a good defense, they struggle, and that could be the case here.
Talking to Charch, we'll finish up with tonight's game. I mean, we have a legitimate front runner for the MVP, Drake May.
Mm-hmm.
Travion Henderson went for 69 and 55-yard touchdowns last week against the Tampa defense. First overall question before you get to, whatever your advice is for tonight's game fantasy-wise. Do you think New England's legit? Do you think they've got a chance to go deep into January or not?
They're absolutely built for it. And part of the reason is not just Drake May, who's a great story, absolute MVP candidate. The progression in year 2 is unbelievable. And if you ever want to know how important a coaching staff is, here is example number 1. Right here is the New England Patriots. They went from a clown show last year, bring in Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels. You have competency and experience at your coaching staff, and look what happens. It's just, the transition has been so stark, so obvious. And so here's Drake May in year 2. He's got the second best completion percentage, despite the fact that he's throwing the second longest passes in the league. That you almost never see that come together, and it has made for an explosive offense. He's thrown multiple touchdowns, 8 of the last 9. The real story that I think is that not enough people talk about, although you and I have in past shows, Patriots' run defense is the best in the league.
It's so good.
Nobody's talking about it. It's so good. They haven't had a 50-yard runner against them all year. And here comes Breece Hall. Poor guy. He's gonna get murdered tonight.
Well, Justin Fields certainly isn't going to throw him into contention tonight. What did he throw for last week? 40-something yards?
So this is an unbelievable box score in a Jets win last week.
Right over Cleveland.
Justin Fields completed 6 passes for 54 yards. And let me tell you about those 54 yards. 42 of them came on a screen pass to Breece Hall. When he caught the ball 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He ran 47 yards on that play to get to the 54 yards. Other than that screen pass, no Jets receiver had more than 4 yards, and nobody caught.
I'm looking at it right now. He was basically 5 for 10 for 12 yards on his other throws. Right. If you take the screen out. Good God.
You can't. How do you win a game like that?
I mean, if you want to know how bad Cincinnati's defense is, there it is right there, because Justin Fields did against Cincinnati. And by the way, Dallas, remember earlier in this year what he's done against nobody else. All right. As always, thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
You're the best. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Charch, everybody. Want to tell you about Foley Mechanical, everybody. Our HVAC system, I don't know, 6 months ago or so was giving us problems. And my wife said, what are we going to do? And I said, we're going to call Foley Mechanical, because I had just met Dan Foley. He had been interested in advertising on the station. He came out himself. He handled everything. He owns 100% of the company. It's not a franchise. It's not, associated with some, big private equity firm. He controls the quality from the equipment to the people he hires. His team, they're professional, they're skilled, they're sharp. Fully mechanical, full service, heating, air conditioning, hot water, and boilers. And they're the go-to for older homes with radiator heat, a real specialty. They work across DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and they proudly install Amana HVAC equipment. If your system needs help like ours did, and you want it done right, I promise you, you will not go wrong calling Foley Mechanical. You can go to FoleyMechanical.com as well. Tell Dan, because he'll probably answer the phone that Kevin Sheehan told you to call. So there were some interesting box score basketball numbers from last night. Nikola Jokic for the Denver Nuggets in their win over the LA Clippers. By the way, Bradley Beal done for the year. Shocker. Hip surgery coming. I mean, he's been legitimately hurt, no doubt. But wow, done again. I mean, I don't know if there's a career left for him after this injury. But in the game last night, the Nuggets beat the Clippers. Beal plays for the Clippers. 130-116. Nikola Jokic, 55 points in the game, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. Of the 55 that he had, all right, in, by the way, 34 minutes, he had 25 in the first quarter. 25 points in the first quarter. He's really good. Notre Dame junior guard Hannah Hidalgo turned in one of the all-time epic NCAA women's performances. I would say men's or women's performances. Last night in the Notre Dame 85-58 win over Akron, Hannah Hidalgo had a school record 44 points. That's impressive. But she had an NCAA record 16 steals in the game. The previous record was held by Jill Ingram. She played at Georgia Tech. She did it with 14, had the record with 14 in 2008. 16 steals in a game to go along with 44 points. And then there was the story of Audi Crooks. Audi Crooks, however it's pronounced. She is Iowa State's big 6'3" center. They beat Valparaiso last night, 97-50, and she set an Iowa State record, scoring 43 points on 18 of 23. She's not a three-point gunner. No, she is a back-to-the-basket, dominant big in the paint. The 43 points came in just 20 minutes. That's all she played. She played half the game and scored 43 points. Pretty good. The Wizards, if you were wondering, they lost last night on the road to the Rockets, 135-112. The Wizards now in the midst of a 10-game losing skid. 10. Most of them, by the way, have really not been that close, although their game the other night against the Pistons went to overtime. But there's a lot of points being scored against the Wizards this year. KD in the game, if you're wondering, he plays for Houston. 23 points, didn't play a lot of the game, but scored 23. For the Wizards, Alex Sarr led the way with 25-11 and had a few block shots as well. All right, when we come back, you're going to hear Steve Suter's overarching analysis of the loss to Detroit. And he describes the defense in a way that I don't think I was expecting. You'll hear it next. If you want your home to be comfortable year-round, your family protected, and an investment you can feel great about for years to come, Window Nation's end-of-year sale is the way to go. You can save big on windows and pull off just that. You'll save 50% off all window styles, plus you can get 0% financing for 5 years, and your total price even includes Window Nation's professional one-day installation. Window Nation's proven quality windows are so good you'll actually save money with lower utility bills every month. They're backed also by a lifetime warranty. Window Nation has an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau. That's real peace of mind when choosing the right company to upgrade your home. Prefer to hear what other customers have to say about Window Nation? Check out over 45,000 five-star customer reviews. Put an end to your window problems. Don't wait. Window Nation's end-of-year sale is your chance to save big with 50% off all window styles, plus 0% financing for 5 years. Sale ends soon, so visit windownation.com today to get started. That's windownation.com. All right, Steve Suter's been doing film breakdown for us all year long. This one was interesting, especially as it related to the defense. I'm going to play a slug of it for you. These were his opening remarks of just kind of how he felt about not only watching the game live, but then going back and watching the All-22.
Well, let's see. I think my first thoughts were I'm not sure if Sheehan's going to want to do this for 7 more weeks with me, because it doesn't look like there's any optimism or positivity on the horizon. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to break down any film to give any type of passion back to the fans or light at the end of the tunnel, because I just don't see it. I mean, you're laughing about the defense, so I'll start about the defense with my thoughts. And I'll tell you what, watching the game and watching the All-22, I was like, what am I watching here? And then it kind of clicked on me. I was like, oh my God, I'm watching a scout team. That was a scout team on defense. And it was almost a scripted practice for the Lions. That's what you would do on like a Thursday. You would go out and say, you would script the defensive play for the scout team, and then you'd run an offensive play saying, we think on 3rd and 7, we're going to see this coverage. We're going to put you in it. Then we're going to call our play, and it's going to work. And it seemed like they could just do that every play, the entire game. You're going up against the scout team. And like the play that Gibbs scored, the 43-yard there at the end, my note, that looked like a walkthrough, not even a full-speed attempt. That was like going out in the parking lot right before the game. You're in shirts and T-shirts, and you're going to walk through the play. We're going to run this pitch to the right. Von Miller, you're going to get sealed easy. You don't care. You're not giving any effort. Luvu, you're not going to take on Sewell because you're tired of doing it. It's the 4th quarter. You don't care. You're just going to go over there and get in your front. You're going to get blown up. Everybody just walked to where they were supposed to go according to the Lions, and they blocked them all with ease, and they scored touchdowns. That's a walkthrough. That's not an NFL team or somebody that 11 players that should be on defense. Those are overall takeaways there. Anytime, if you're a Washington fan and you're watching it, anytime Martin and Kinlaw are not in the lineup, not on the field, it's buckle up. It's because it's not going to work. You're not going to stop the run. You're not going to get any pressure on the passer. So whatever they call is going to work, whoever that offense is. It's more, and when you go back to the scouting comment, even more so because, and this isn't blame on the coach. They don't have the players, like you mentioned. They're trying to figure out who can play DN. I even saw Sheldon Day out there at DN, and that was before Payne got ejected. So they were trying him at DN. Any of the D tackles that have had to play DN, and that's Kinlaw included, even though he's probably the best of the converted bunch, and he's still not effective at DN. They're all out of position. It's obvious they're out of position. They're not used to, especially when there's a run design or a play design from a pass protection standpoint where they're unblocked. You see that all the time, right? You unblock a DN, so you can get a double team on a tackle, and the DN's got to react. Does he crash down and cover the run, or does he wait and maybe it's going to be a zone read and there's going to be a pull, or is there a bootleg? Anytime they do that to any of the makeshift DNs, right, Day, or even if it's Kinlaw, or if you put Payne out there, they have no idea what they're doing. They're lost in that space because they're not used to not getting blocked. Yeah. So I get it, but teams are just taking advantage of it, as I would too. I would just pick on that portion as well. So you just have no ability to stop the ball. You can't run. I would like to bet or think, I think Detroit could have won the game without throwing one pass. And I'm not even blowing smoke there. They could hand the ball off every play, and they would have put up 24 points and won the game.
I strongly believe that. There's no every time you could probably click a run play on the all 22, and you're going to see the offensive line from the Lions just change the line of scrimmage by 2 or 3 yards every play. So there's no chance. Bobby's got to make great plays. He's going to have good instincts as a linebacker to try to fit a hole because he's going to have a double team. And the lineman's going to be able to get to him the second level. Same with the linemen. They got to try to start guessing. And when you guess, you get it wrong, then the hole gets bigger, the gap gets bigger, and it just all snowballs. So, yeah, not a Sam's chance in hell you're stopping anybody on defense for the foreseeable future.
You want to hear something interesting about their run game? So Gibbs averaged 9.5 yards per carry, 15 carries, 142 yards. And I would love to know what the average, yards were before the first contact. It was second level, third level most of the time. But in the playoff game, and I don't know if you remember, Washington went into Detroit in January as a 9-point underdog. Detroit was the 1 seed. They had the best record in the NFL last year. And Washington destroyed them. Detroit was banged up on defense. But Ben Johnson was still the offensive coordinator. He's the head coach in Chicago. Jahmyr Gibbs in the first half of a game that was 31-21 at halftime. It was did you watch their playoff game last year against Detroit?
Yeah, in and out, but I can't say I was locked in. I'll be able to recall any of the plays.
Yeah, this was a game that was 31-21 at halftime. It was an absolute track meet. Detroit couldn't stop Washington. Washington couldn't stop Detroit. But Jared Goff in the game threw 3 picks. But at halftime, Gibbs was averaging 10.5 yards per carry. And for some reason, they stopped giving him the ball. And my biggest takeaway, other than that Jaden Daniels was an absolute star in the game, is that if Detroit had just handed the ball off to Gibbs 25 times instead of 14 times, Detroit probably would have maybe not won the game, but it would have come down to the final possession one way or the other. Don't you think he is special?
Oh, yeah, he's really good. Yeah, he's really good. Yeah, probably I probably put Bijan a little in front of him.
Yeah, of the backs you watched.
But it's close. They're both so explosive, really good balance, can do it in the pass game and the run game. Yeah.
So they didn't need to throw one pass, and they would have still put up 24 plus and won the game.
I would bet on it for sure. They could have had their way around the ball. Now, obviously, like if you tell the defense they're not going to throw the pass, then you're going to be coming downhill a little more. It's going to be a little harder, so it's a little tongue-in-cheek play. They could just do whatever they wanted on the ground game, and it made the pass game too easy. There might have been 2 plays, maybe 3, that I can recall that Goff had to go to his second read when he was passing to, right? Play action, boom, my first read's open, dump it to him. Not even play action, standard drop back pass. Yeah, I got my first read. Here we go. Let's give it to him. Maybe 2 or 3 times he had to, throw a bad ball or just throw an incomplete pass because the secondary actually covered the route concept that was ran. But few and far between. Probably one of Goff's easiest games he's played this season. Drop back and pass. See my first read. There you go. Wide open. And I'm on St. Brown. Like, come on, man. How do you not have more eyes on that guy? Is mind-boggling. Blowing coverage again. The 3rd or 4th play, they blow the coverage when it's play action. And, of course, it involves Sanders still. It's hard to tell if it's Sanders still or Jones who's blowing it. But this goes back to the point of why can't they communicate this? Why do they not know who's guarding who? It's week, 10? And you still have these communication issues in the secondary? You're not going to get it right. I'm just convinced it's not going to happen. You're going to continue to have those flaws. Defense is in trouble. We're not. Everybody knows that.
So
if we switch over offensively,
real quickly, I just want to inform you a couple of things. Number one is that Dan Quinn did demote Joe Witt Jr., the defensive coordinator, this week. So Dan Quinn is taking over the defensive coordinator responsibilities, including play calling. I doubt it's going to help much.
I just said, my gut says, good luck. You're not going to be able to create any pressure. But then my other part of me says, wow, this is going to be really interesting for me to watch next week to see if, and I'm quoting, right, quote unquote here, if a really good play caller on defense is actually that noticeable for me in the film room. So now I'm pretty excited to watch the defense next week see if I can notice any tendency changes, defensive call changes. But my initial gut says you got no shot. You can call the defense that you want in the world. You can't get pressure. You can't stop the run. You got D tackles that are just not fit to do either of those things.
And Trey Amos is now out for the year. Okay, so they lost him in the game.
Oh my God.
I know. They also lost on offense Traylon Burks after, he had probably the best game a receivers had in weeks.
Yes.
And
oh my God.
they lost him, and Deron Payne got suspended for punching Amon-Ra. So
yeah, I did see that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know how I feel about him and his plays so far this season.
Yeah.
So they need to eject him off the roster. I'm not worried about ejecting him out of the game.
Here's the other thing, though, with Quinn, and we've talked about this week, is that it's awfully convenient for him that he's taking over right after they face the Chiefs, Seahawks, and Lions. Now Miami's
So
capable.
Hold on, let's flip that. You know what? Because sorry to cut you off. My first point here is because didn't Dan Campbell call the plays against Washington?
Yeah,
he took it over.
Exactly.
Yeah. So my first thought was I would be pissed if I'm the offensive coordinator for the Lions.
Right.
And you take me off on this game where literally I could close my eyes, point to my call sheet, pick any play, and it's going to work. And now you look like this great play caller against Washington. I would be pissed.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All
right. So offensively, your big takeaways.
The offense, I understood the game plan. I could see what they were trying to do. They ran a lot of 13 personnel, more than normal all season, and that's obvious. Why? Because they don't like their 3 wide receiver package. So let's put more tight ends in and let's see if that is more effective. So they did that a lot. The problem is when you have to try to throw out of that formation, they couldn't really get any separation, create any holes in the zones. So limited Mariota in where he's going to go if you did have to throw on a 3rd down or a 2nd and long. So I get the concept. Let's put more of the players that we planned on playing or that we thought have a chance to play with the tight end package in versus the Band-Aids at receiver that we've been putting in. I get that. What I question is if you were going to do that and play that 13 personnel, then where's Trent Scott? Where is he? Why don't you go back to the 6 offensive line package that you ran in the early part of the season that was effective for a couple games? If you're going to go big.
Right.
Because it's not like Sinnott and Bates, they're not effective in the passing game anyway. So when you try to pass, big deal. They're not threatening anybody out there. The Lions, had the day off in the secondary, really, for the most part, as most teams are going to for the rest of the season, it would seem. They just don't have to worry about anybody threatening them deep, getting stretched at any point in the ball game. So Mariota doesn't have options to go deep. Really, when he does, it's a fluke where he had a cover 2 that he hit Lane on a nice deep post. That's probably the only deep ball that was really caught or even had a chance of being caught the whole game. You don't have effective play calling because you just don't have personnel. So I get the concept. I get what they were trying to do. Just you don't have the players to pull it off.
Yeah, that's a good point on Trent Scott. When they went to some of that earlier in the season, they were effective with that when they went with that heavy package. So you think the 13 personnel should involve instead of 3 tight ends,
I'll go back to 12,
have Trent Scott be one of the tight ends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He'll be the extra lineman, but he'd line up in the tight end spot. I'd probably take him out for Bates right now, if I was being honest. He's had a couple of games where blocking hasn't been his strength.
Yeah, he's not been healthy. He's not been healthy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so even more. Then take him out, put Scott in. And let's try to run and get 4 or 5 yards when you need to keep the ball out of Detroit's hands anyway. So try to grind the clock. Let's get 3 and 4 at a clip.
Right.
Put the big package in there. At least give it a series. They didn't try it at all. I don't think Trent Scott had a snap unless he's on field goal or extra point.
No,
so they didn't try it.
I think
so that was
right.
shocking to me because you're trying to go big with 3 tight ends in the game. Well, go big. Who cares if they know you're about to run? They know you're about to run with the 3 tight ends, and they don't care if you play action pass or if you drop back and pass from that formation. They don't care because you're not going to threaten anybody. So you might as well put in Scott there, try to get a little more meat and get some more yardage.
Yeah, I'm checking to see if he was. I'm checking to see if he was active for the game. He's at first. I wondered if he. Yes, of course.
Coleman's available.
Yeah,
he's a tackle. So if it's not Scott, then put in Coleman.
Right.
Because he came. I know Coleman came in the last part of the game, so he's healthy.
Yeah.
Put him in.
Right. I mean, why anybody? Wiley, any of them. that
Yeah,
are
it doesn't
up
matter who it
and
is.
active. Yeah,
Correct.
sure.
Correct. Yeah, just you got to try something there.
Yeah.
Let's try to get some more yards there because they got to be watching the film. I mean, if Bates is banged up and that's the reason he hasn't been able to stick his nose in and be more effective blocker, then let's cut to the chase here, man. Let's get a bigger body in there and try to switch it up. But that was really it from a game plan standpoint. From trying to attack Detroit standpoint, that was their play because Sinnott had 21 plays out of the 51 plays that Mariota was in. That's a high percentage of a package running 3 tight ends.
Trent
So
Scott was inactive. He was inactive.
Okay. Right. So there we go. We moved to Coleman or we moved to Wiley.
Yep.
Big deal. Add another lineman in there and see if we can be more effective running the football and slowing the game down and try to. So that would be my criticism offensively. And then usually now Mariota is Mariota. He's good. He's a solid backup quarterback, and he played very well in the game. Well, he played well in the game. He's got very little mistakes that I'm reading. Maybe the first third down he has.
Steve Suter from my podcast yesterday, he broke down Mariota's game in more detail. He gave us the top 3, bottom 3 performers on both offense and defense. He's really good at doing this. How about the scout team description and the walkthrough description on the Jahmyr Gibbs 44-yard touchdown run? Yeah, that was truly unusual to watch on Sunday. That's why, on, the show, the recap show, it's one thing. We understand they're playing shorthanded, majorly shorthanded, but they weren't anywhere near anybody. And I think that's ultimately why Quinn just said, the Seattle game, the Kansas City game, the Dallas games, they're all, bad. But this one was a particular level of bad. It really looked they were non-participants throughout. It'll be interesting to see if Quinn can do anything, to help this defense. If there's actually any life to it on Sunday. I mean, the players they will have out there, it'll be even a smaller, a shorter crew because of the loss of Amos this week. So, I think one of the interesting points is just, the Kinlaw and Paynes and Sheldon Days. It's not just the different players that are playing. The players that have stayed healthy that were starters are playing different positions. Now, Kinlaw is a D tackle. He's had to play a lot of D end. Payne's a D tackle. He's had to play a lot of D end. And as Steve said, they're just kind of fish out of water out in those spots. They are inside players, not outside players. All right, we'll do some NFL buy and sell when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. All right, if you want to weigh in with an NFL buy or an NFL sell, 301-230-0980. All of our NFL conversation on this show is presented by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game live every Sunday all season long. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today. All right. I am looking ahead, and when I say ahead, to 2026 for my first buy.
Oh, boy.
Because we are already approaching that mode, right, for our team.
Sure.
I saw Ben put out a mock draft already. Yeah.
Yeah, Brian.
And he's got Washington selecting Ruben Bain, I think, at number 9 overall.
Wow.
Or something
That
like.
would be, he's the number one prospect right now on tankathon.com.
Oh, he's an absolute
amazing.
edge rushing, game wrecking defensive player out of the University of Miami. But my buy is that in this offseason where Washington will have top 3 to 5 salary cap space, they will go after and land New York Jet running back Breece Hall. There are a lot of other positions they need. I understand Sheehan running back. We've got Bill. Yeah, we've got Bill.
We're good.
Breece Hall will be entering his year 25 season. He was, by the way, very sought after at the trade deadline. The Jets wanted a third-rounder back in return. And for running backs, teams just aren't willing to give that up, especially when, a lot of the really good running backs in the draft come in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. You're going to have to pay him somewhere in the neighborhood of around $12 million a year. A 4-year, $48 million deal is sort of that spot rack, projected salary. I love Hall as not only a runner, by the way, playing on a terrible team. He's got 664 yards rushing this year, averaging nearly 5 yards per carry. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. You heard Charch. Justin Fields was 6 for 11 for 54 yards last Sunday against the Browns. And one of those completions was a 42-yard screen to Breece Hall. Breece Hall's a dynamic player. He's got quicks. He's got speed. He's got vision. He can run inside. He can be a big-time threat on the outside. I think he can be a better pass receiving threat than certainly he's been this year. Last year, he caught 57 balls for the Jets with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I'm jumping ahead in today's NFL buy and sell, looking at all the salary cap space, a big-time roster makeover, still working on the quarterback's rookie deal, and looking at the top free agents. I think Breece Hall will be a target for Washington. What's your first buy?
My first buy, it's more of an announcement that I did buy something. So when I look around at the midseason MVP race, there are a lot of faces that are somewhat unfamiliar, like Drake May, Sam Darnold up at the top of the board. So I start looking for a little bit of value. Who could save their season over the next couple games and start to build as we and finish strong, make the playoffs and get in? I have bought Lamar Jackson, 30-1 MVP odds.
Okay. I thought that's where you were headed. Okay, he's 30-1 right now?
Yes, he's 30-1 right now. Looking for a little bit of value. I think it's a good little play they still have 2 games against the Steelers. Their schedule's a little bit easier than I think the Steelers is. I think and the one big game on that is that the fact that the Ravens play the Jets. I think that's just going to be a nice little cakewalk for them. But hey, we'll see. But yeah, Lamar 30-1 MVP. That's what I got for my first buy.
I was looking at the MVP odds. Drake May's the favorite in a lot of spots. Matthew Stafford's actually it's very tight between May and Stafford. They're basically almost both right at 3-1, plus 300, depending on where you look. And some, Stafford's plus 290 and Drake's plus 300 or plus 310. But basically, they're almost co-MVP favorites right now. And I was looking at that to see if there was. That's an interesting one. I think it's 30-1 for a reason.
Yeah,
and the reason really is May, Stafford, and Taylor Jonathan Taylor
Yeah.
are really way ahead of the group right now. Although, Sam Darnold's season is, he's like the fifth. He's behind Mahomes and Josh Allen right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's the sixth pick. If Seattle keeps rolling and he keeps rolling, he could move into that. But look, when you look at the Patriots, what they have remaining on their schedule, starting tonight, I mean, where is Drake May going to fall off a cliff? I mean, he's got two horrendous defenses the next 2 weeks in the Jets and the Bengals, right?
Yeah.
That puts you into December. He'll be a co-favorite or the favorite. He's not going to step back tonight or against Cincinnati. Then they play the Giants at home. The Giants are really a mess right now. They've got the Jets twice. They've got the Dolphins defense. The Bills aren't very good defensively. Stafford's just got a totally different, finishing stretch. Seattle twice. The Lions, the Bucks. They've got, what? Drake May's going to win the MVP, isn't he?
He is going to win the MVP. I'm looking at, as we go through the schedule, it seems very clear now, 11 weeks into the season, Drake May will be your MVP.
He's hitting it at the right time. He's having a great season, don't get me wrong.
For sure.
But there's no Lamar or Josh Allen type seasons at quarterback to match him like there was last year.
Yeah.
Matt Stafford is close, though. Matt Stafford is close. Matt Stafford right now is 25 touchdowns, 2 picks. I think I'm looking up the current. Stafford, 25 over 2. Wow. His completion percentage is, it's less. Goff has the highest completion percentage at 74%. And then Mays at 71.7. Look, Darnold, here's the one thing in Mays' stat line that stands out as a negative. It's the only thing. He's been sacked more times than any quarterback in the league except for Cam Ward.
Damn.
Yeah. So
poor offensive rookie of the year.
Drake May has a really good chance unless Stafford just starts lighting up all these good teams. That would be the benefit of what Stafford has left. He's got really good defensive teams left on his schedule. So if he keeps this going and ends up, 39-4, touchdown passes, it's going to be hard given what he faced.
Mm-hmm.
If he leads the Rams to say 13-4 and has that kind of year, it would be hard not to give it to him. I'd play Matt Stafford right now.
Yeah, with the upside, I definitely see what you're saying, but
Stafford will get more credit if he continues to do what he's doing.
For sure. What are my odds right now? Let me take a peek.
What? You took Lamar. I see it. I see it at plus 2,900, plus 3,000.
Yep.
You're right at the right number. 30-1. There's nobody else. It's Drake May, it's Stafford, it's Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, they're literally tied 3-1.
Yeah,
right
I mean, I guess Mahomes and Allen could light it up in the second half. Darnold could continue to do what he's doing. Where's Justin Herbert?
Jay Herbo is
23-1.
Okay.
The Chargers are pretty good on defense right now.
They are. And Herbert's just not rising.
Herbert's second in the league in yards.
He looks great. He's been playing lights out. I will give him that, but he hasn't been at the same. It just has the dots downfield have not been the same out of Herbert's arm as they have for Drake May and Matt Stafford.
Darnold right now leads the league in QBR, and it's actually not close. Mahomes is second, followed by Dak, Lamar, and then Drake May, followed by Stafford. Yeah. Interesting.
Quite.
All right. Let's sell some stuff. So I think I've done this already. I forget if I did this or not. Did I sell Indianapolis last week?
Yes, you did.
Okay. They shouldn't have beaten Atlanta on Sunday. They should not have beaten the Falcons on Sunday.
This is Jonathan Taylor's case for MVP, man.
Yeah, no, they're a really good team, but Daniel Jones is into that mode, and I'm telling you what, that dude thrives off vibes and confidence, and he doesn't look as confident the last 2 weeks. All right, well, then let me get to my second sell.
Sure.
I'm selling the Chicago Bears. I just don't see it. They're in first place, tied for first place in the NFC North right now. They've won 6 out of the last 7. But like we've talked about, Dallas, Raiders, Washington, Saints, Bengals, Giants. They've got games against the Steelers, the Eagles, 2 against the Packers, 1 against the Lions, 1 against the Niners still left. I mean, I give Caleb all the credit in the world. He is a gamer, man. The runs he's had in some of these key spots to pull out these last 2 wins, the throw that he had, in Cincinnati to Loveland for the win, the touchdown run against the Giants in the comeback. I mean, the Bears have been the comeback kids here. And he's showing a lot. They're still throwing the football, man. There's some times where you're like, I'm sorry, what was that? Like that was 20 yards just off, just a little bit high and outside or high and inside. But they do have, by the way, some talent. Chicago does. DeAndre Swift actually is putting together a pretty good season for them. But I don't see the Bears. In fact, I don't see the Bears being an NFC playoff team. So that's what I'm selling. The NFC playoff race. So you have Philly, Seattle, Detroit, Tampa, the Rams, right? The Packers. 6 really good teams. Well, there are 7 spots, so the Bears, the Niners, the Panthers, the Vikings. Don't be surprised if the wild card team in the NFC 7th spot ends up being a 9-8 team. Could be, because the Niners and Bears are going to lose a bunch of games down the stretch here, and they're in this. They're in the top. Bears are 6 right now. The 49ers are 8. So the 49ers, I could see them finishing 9-8 and snagging the 7 seed for sure.
I could see them squeaking in.
Maybe your Panthers end up doing it.
Hey,
so
man.
I'm selling the Bears. What are you selling?
So we kind of touched on this yesterday during Pretenders or Contenders. I'm selling Bo Nix, not the Broncos as a whole, but specifically Bo. The misses against the Raiders were so egregious, and it further confirms that once the lights are bright and you're down the stretch and it's all on you, Bo's going to try and put it on himself, and he's going to either overthrow a guy by 20 yards or throw it into triple coverage for an interception, or just dirt it. Like I can't stand watching Bo anymore. For this Broncos team, I feel like I keep having this hypothetical in my head, like what's the quarterback that they need to get them kind of where they need to be? I think that quarterback's in Atlanta, Kevin. I think Kirk Cousins could fix the Broncos if he were there, but Bo Nix is currently there. We're past the trade deadline. Not much to be done. So selling Bo Nix. I'm out.
Yeah. It's going to be, there's going to be a lot of quarterback opportunities in 2026. Barnwell actually wrote about it today, like Arizona with Kyler Murray. That could be an opportunity. The Raiders with Geno Smith. The Jets for sure are not going to, bring back Justin Fields. He's not the guy. You could have guys retiring in Pittsburgh and in LA. What if the Rams win the Super Bowl? Ooh. You think that would be it for Stafford?
Yeah,
you
right
might
off
retire.
In the sunset. Yeah.
Miami could be moving on from Tua. Let's see what Minnesota believes in at the end of the season as far as JJ McCarthy. They have too much talent to kind of waste a couple of years in a row. I think it'll be interesting if there's a coaching change in Atlanta. I like Penix Jr. We didn't talk about the Berlin game Sunday. He was terrible in that game. And they still had a chance to beat the Colts. He was something like 12 of 30 or something like that in the game. 12 of 28 in the game. Took 3 sacks, had I think 1 or 2 intentional groundings that were terrible. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what though, Drake London has developed into a legit upper tier wide receiver, hasn't he?
Yes,
he has
his contested
great
catch
radius. He gets separation, but when it is a 50-50 ball, he almost always wins. He is just a flat out great athlete. Plus, he's 6'4". That's the guy Washington wanted. The Jahan Dotson year.
They just got Julio Jones back.
I think London's really, really good. Really good. But back to there are going to be some interesting quarterback opportunities in this coming off season. And what you want if you're Washington, and let's just say they end up picking in the top 10, starting to trend in that direction, is you just want so many teams at the top of that draft to have a quarterback need and to reach for some of these quarterbacks. I don't think it's a great quarterback class. I don't think there's a given. I like Mendoza. I like Ty Simpson, but there's not, this isn't 2024 by any stretch. It's probably more like last year, except there are a lot of guys that all look the same. But you know what happens in the draft? These teams that need them are going to take them, and that would work to, a team like Washington's certainly favor if they are picking high in the draft to get somebody like Reuben Bain, as an example. All right. If anybody wants to weigh in, 301-230-0980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980, the team980.com. We are also free and live on the Odyssey app.
All right. Happy Thursday, everybody. Here's what's happening. The Wizards last night, they lose again, this time to the Houston Rockets, 135-112, and drop to 1-11. They're off for the next couple days. They'll reset, take on the Nets this Sunday. Tonight, you got the Caps. They take on the Florida Panthers. Logan Thompson expected to be in net puck drop, set for 7 p.m. Pre-game coverage gets underway at 6:45 over on 106.7 The Fan. John Walton, Ken Stavern, and Katie Florio on the call. Right here on the Team 980, we got Thursday Night Football on tap. The Jets traveling up to Foxborough to take on the Patriots. Pre-game gets going tonight at 8. Kickoff set for 8:15. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. And you can catch Den's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
All right, we've bought and we've sold. Now it's your turn at 301-230-0980. We'll finish up with a little Cliff Kingsbury sound from earlier today in Madrid. Let's go to our guy, Kev in Arlington. Kevin, go ahead.
Hey, Kev, thanks for taking my call. Speaking of Cliffy, it reminds me of Bum Phillips talking about Don Shula, the famous and beat urines and take urines and beat hisns. And what I mean by that is, let's just go back to 1981 when Joe Gibbs wanted to run the Air Coryell show here, and we went 0-5, and he said, "Oh my God, I'm going to be fired." This is what they do. He devises the two tight end single back offense for Riggo, and the rest is history. What I'm not seeing from Cliff, okay, are the types of adjustments that your guy, Steve Suter, continuously points out. Well, I don't know why they're not doing this. I don't know why they're not doing that. He reminds me of ball coach in that he seems to refuse to go to the power game, which is the one thing we can physically do, because he doesn't enjoy it. Remember how ball coach went down to Jacksonville and they had a beautiful day and they were going to win if they just pounded the ball? I mean, he wasn't having fun.
Yeah, I do remember that. It was, but it was such a nice day. I just thought we could pitch it and catch it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you and I go way back, and I love Cliff, but I think Cliff, well, first of all, we may lose.
Is that what you're
anyway.
selling? You're selling Cliff Kingsbury?
I'm selling Cliff for 26. Yeah, okay. We need new coordinators, Kev. I had serious concerns about both of them going into last year. I'm not giving back last year, but I'm not seeing the kind of adjustments I need to see from Cliff to lean on what it is we can still do. I'm sorry. Steve Suter's been pointing out these deficiencies, and I agree with him. So, yeah, I want new coordinators next year. I love Quinn. I love Peters. They're a good tandem. But we're going to definitely replace Witt. And Cliffy is probably going to take a job in college. We're going to need, hopefully, someone who runs a Shanahan-type offense. That's what we need.
Look, that's my favorite offense in the NFL. So, yes, I hear you on that. I think, though, like, Joe Theismann was the quarterback and was the quarterback the entire time. And John Riggins was the running back. And Art Monk was a wide receiver. And Joe Jacoby. And,
his philosophy to
I get it. And Joe was the all-time best at taking yours in and beating your team. He could take anybody and do it, and he always adapted to the talent. I agree with you to a certain extent. I would just say, with respect to this season, Suter pointed out, you had a free safety in cover 3 that basically wasn't playing the deep center part of the field because he didn't fear that any receiver could run by him if he snuck up and robbed the middle of the field. Like you've got crowded boxes because there's no threat on the outside. It's really hard to do anything right now for them, especially against the teams they just played. Maybe Sunday will look better because Miami is not a good defensive team.
One last thing. I don't think it's hard to play the power game that he refuses to play. You listen to Doc Walker on these post-game shows, Kev.
Rodriguez had 6 carries for 16 yards. They tried it early.
All right, well but the point.
And then it's 22-3 with about 6 minutes to go in the first quarter.
I'm just talking about personnel deployment also.
Yeah, they went heavy 13 and they ran the ball early. But to your point and Suter's point, why didn't they throw another offensive lineman out there rather than having 3 tight ends? Yes, I'm with you to a certain extent. I just don't know on either side of the ball right now if they are equipped to make anything look that pretty. I do think offensively they've got a better shot, though.
Kevin. There's never been an injury plague I can remember with the Redskins like this one. The only one that comes close is Pettibone's year.
Yeah, Pettibone's year was terrible, no doubt. God, that was and they lost Rippon in week 2. Exactly. Thanks.
Yeah, it was bad. But anyway, love you, brother. Thank you for taking my call.
All right, talk to you. Cam, go ahead. What are you buying? What are you selling?
All right, what's up, Kevin? I got a buy and a sell. So my buy is I'm going with you. I'm thinking about 2026. I'm buying that Quinn is going to have PTSD from the Seattle game. He's going to overcorrect. He's going to sit Jaden for the rest of the year, and Jaden is going to be comeback player of the year 2027 or for the 2026 season.
That's a good prediction. I hope he doesn't sit the rest of the year, though. If he's healthy enough to play, I think that'd be a big mistake.
Agreed. And then my sell is it's kind of just like last year. I'm selling all the the crap coming out of Philly where AJ Brown and Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts hate each other, all that. I think they're going to get it together, whether Jalen's throwing 100 yards a game or 300, and they're going to be a contender just like last year.
Yeah,
I'm
they're
selling
just
all the noise coming up.
Yeah, championship DNA, no doubt. Thanks, Paulie. Finish it up for us. Buy something, sell something.
Hell to the W, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm racing to the shelf with the first caller, and I'm selling Cliff Kingsbury.
Okay.
Man, my man was making some good points. We'll get into this another day. I know I got a lot of time. But I'm selling Cliffs, man. I got 2 buys, though. I got 2 buys. My first buy, man, I'm buying Reggie Love, Notre Dame, man. If we can get him, grab him. He's Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Saquon. He's that type of back. He's better than Gentry who went 5 last year. So we need explosive players on offense.
Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame, is just an absolute freaking stud. I mean, this guy is going to be a first-round pick as a running back. By the way, the other guy, Price, is really good too. Notre Dame yeah. All right.
And I'm also buying Wink Martindale, defensive coordinator, man.
I thought about him.
Wink.
I thought about him.
Wink, man.
Wink is where is Wink Martindale right now? He is
Michigan's defensive coordinator,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's at Michigan.
There you go. Go get Wink, man. I like what he was doing when he was with the Giants, man. Aggressive defense.
All right,
That's
thanks.
all we need, man.
I'll holler at you later. All right. Do want to play just a quick Cliff Kingsbury quote or two from earlier today in Madrid. This was Cliff on just the difficulty of preparing kind of each week with a different crew.
Challenging has this year been for you with all the in and outs and different lineups and different receivers? What's the challenge been like for you to put together an offense?
Yeah, it's been interesting. There's no doubt, and I think it started in the spring, just trying to figure out who was going to be up, who was going to be playing, who was healthy, and so as coaches, our job is to maximize who we have and try to score points and win games the best way we can. And so as a staff, it's been a unique experience, but I think every year you learn more and more about yourself as a coach, your team, and kind of how you want to do things. And we're just kind of going through that this year.
I wanted to play that one coming off of Kevin and Paulie's thoughts. It really isn't just the season. It's the fact that they haven't had everybody going back to the off season, starting with, of course, the receiver and Terry McLaurin. At this point, though, they're I was looking at this the other day. They're still top half of the league offense yards, the traditional number, but it's not been good, obviously. Did want to mention real quickly Window Nation. Window Nation's got right now their best deal of the year. It's their end of year sale. You can save big on new windows if you've been thinking about new windows. 50% off all window styles, 0% financing for 5 years. So you won't pay interest for 5 years. Your total price includes Window Nation's professional one-day installation, and the windows come with a lifetime warranty. You're getting a great product. You're getting a great product for a great deal, and you're working with a company that's got over 45,000 five-star customer reviews. Put an end to your window problems. Call them at 866-90-NATION or go to windownation.com. Mention my name and schedule a free less than hour. That's all it'll take. Less than 1 hour estimate. They'll leave you with the quote. You can make the call. 50% off on all window styles. 0% financing. You don't pay any interest until the year 2030. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. All right. What'd you say? Doc is up next. I'm excited about that. And thank you for telling me, because he would have been very upset if I didn't tease the fact that Richard Doc Walker is on deck from 1 to 4. I will be tuned in. You should too. I'm back tomorrow.